The East Mediterranean, a region full of opportunities but also challenges. Energy security, logistics, transport, trade, but also security challenges. Today, I have the distinct pleasure and honor to welcome Mr. Peter Stevenson, East Mediterranean editor at MEES. My name is Dr. Efthymiopoulos. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Strategy International, and this is Prime Analysis. Dear Mr. Stevenson, welcome to another Prime Analysis of Strategy International.
Thank you, Marius.
It's been a great pleasure and honor to have you here with us, knowing that your expertise in the East Med is really important. And in fact, the energy corridors, the security architectures, the design, the combinations are part of your work. But it is common in our Prime Analysis to start all our discussions with regards to the life of the person that we are discussing with. So, young Peter, the Peter who has a vision about his life, who wants to study, who wants to travel around the world, and also the why the East Med.
I wouldn't say that I've always been focused on the East Med or energy or these sorts of things. It's been a journey to get where I've been. I was born in the East Med, so of course that's sort of what brings me back here. My mother is from Cyprus, so again I have roots here, but I also have roots in the UK, so I've been back and forth, as you can probably tell from my accent as well. It's not, I don't sound Cypriot when I speak English, but university came and went. Work after university was a mixed bag of many different things that led me eventually to journalism, where I was working at the Cyprus Mail, and then eventually that caught the attention, let's say, of the people at MEES. And for the last decade or so, more than a decade now, I've been at MEES covering the East Med, but it's been a gradual journey. It's been a gradual education of the various facets of the East Med, the energy, the security, the geopolitics, the economy. It's all intertwined. It's not just one aspect that personally I look at from my position, and I think it makes it a much richer experience as well from my point of view, that you see all of these different facets and they're all interlinked, so you understand it better. Too many publications, I think, nowadays we see
coming out about the East Med.
Yeah, and they're specialized, so they'll just look at LNG, or they'll just look at the politics, or they'll just look at the economy, while you can't look at one thing, of course, on its own.
Everything is intertwined,
exactly.
I think, in the East Med, but we will have this opportunity to discuss a bit in details the reasons why we see the way things that we see, or why has it been split by either companies or newspapers or anybody who wants to define the East Med. But you say you have the better two of both Cyprus and the UK. Has it been a positive vibe for you with regards to the civilizational understanding of the two challenges? Because both countries, Cyprus is here located in this Med, the UK has invested interests in the Middle East centuries ago. So things have really differentiated itself from the historical background, the reasons. Nonetheless, we are at a crossroad now, considering what is happening. So what are your first thoughts, if I may start like this, with regards to the expertise that you have gained, considering what you anticipate that may happen, if you want, as an introductory remark, so we can develop more, if you want, our discussion?
As a young man, you don't really understand the significance of being in Cyprus and being half British and half Cypriot, and what Britain, the UK did in Cyprus, the whole history of it. I think a lot of people in Cyprus tend to have their history, or the history books, or their minds to an extent, focused on 1974. So sort of history starts from there, but obviously Cyprus's history is much broader than that, and the British played a hugely significant role in that. So having both cultures and both influences as I grow up and I understand it better, really does help shape how you view the region, but it also makes you understand the more sinister is a difficult word to use, but the British have always been trying to influence politics and
Well, they tried to influence the Middle East. I mean, it's not.
Of course, and
I mean,
they have
did
influence. I
influence
mean,
the Middle East. Yeah, not tried. They've
They've made borders that weren't there, and nations that weren't there.
Seismical. Yeah.
So that's been a learning curve for me. It wasn't something that I was invested in when I was a young man.
So, did you study journalism, or did you?
No. So my journey's been quite random to an extent. When I finished school, I wasn't amazingly sure what I wanted to do. I was into sports a lot, to be honest. Had dreams of becoming maybe a professional footballer or something like that, which was, a pipe dream at the time. But I studied film history.
Okay.
I was interested in film, and came back and I worked in the industry here in Cyprus for a while before stumbling into journalism, as it were, at a later
Why
stage.
Cyprus? I mean, somebody who wants to do a film industry usually go
to
the West. Nowadays, they might go to India for Bollywood.
It was Cyprus that drew me back, because
so you're trying to find a
home,
back home.
A home, I guess. I was born here, but we left when I was 3. We went to the UK, went to London, and then we came back with my mum when I was 14, finished school here. And those years kind of formed my love for the island, and that I felt
home.
Yeah, Cyprus feels like home. I don't feel inherently Cypriot. I don't feel inherently British.
But you get the
but
best
I feel,
of the two worlds.
Yeah, I feel like when I go back to the UK that I'm not that I'm home, but I feel comfortable. I know my way around. The surroundings don't feel uncomfortable, but Cyprus feels like home. I feel comfortable. I know my way around inside out. I know hundreds of people.
And obviously, in the work process, also the
that helps.
Starting your professional life and goes on and on gives you a wider perspective.
Of course, and in getting into journalism, also it helps being of the kind of character that I am. That I'm open. I'll speak to anybody. I like to have a chat.
When does journalism start?
Journalism started probably around 2010. I just finished doing a postgraduate certificate in education to become a teacher.
Okay. So that was
another tangent
okay.
that I went off on. I was also coaching football at the time, and I was doing several different jobs, just trying to pay the bills at the end of the day. And I went to the Cyprus Mail, worked there for a couple of years. Really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the work. I really enjoyed the atmosphere. Just trying to get a story, trying to speak to people. All of what journalism kind of encompasses. And then MEES came knocking, Middle East Economic Survey came knocking, and it was too good an opportunity to turn down. It wasn't something that I was overly focused on, but it has now become my sole focus, as it were, and it's something that I think I've thrived on over the last 3-4 years. I mean, it takes time to get into the industry.
You have to invest.
Yeah,
you have to invest time, capabilities, networks.
I mean, the network is, and it's funny how it works. So in the beginning, you're desperate to get contacts. You're desperate to speak to people.
Once the engine starts, then.
But people aren't going to speak to you because they don't know you. They don't know who you are. So how do you develop that kind of relationship? How do you develop a name within the industry? And it just, like you say, it takes time, it takes effort, it takes persistence. And I think that I haven't reached the top of the mountain, let's say, but I'm getting there, and I think my work has is reflective of the progress that I've made over the last years. You know, it's given me a platform. I mean, it's ironic how it works that now that I'm better known, more people are coming out and talking to me. So I don't even need to make the effort to, although I do, I don't need to make the effort as much to go out and go to conferences and speak to people, because people are searching for me. They're knocking on my door, because they realize that it's not journalism like, I mean, I don't
It's an
want to,
analysis of
yeah,
the
I'm not
things
going
that are going
to
on.
say bad things about Reuters or Bloomberg or any of, you know, the wires, because they do a fantastic job, and I couldn't even begin to start understanding how difficult it is to be out there constantly on a day-to-day basis. But we don't do that. We try and give analysis, a deeper analysis, to give value, because anybody can go on the internet and find news, right? At the click of a button. It's, what does that news mean? Companies who, a large basis of the news that comes out from the companies or from a ministry or from wherever, and they're going to try and give you the narrative that they want to feed you. They're not going to tell you, you know, well, profits are down or whatever. So we have the data that we can do our own analysis. We don't need to go off what they're saying. We can use the numbers that they give, but then we use our own analysis.
It's very good, because while you were talking, I was thinking the way that Strategy International developed. The idea was a two-pillar approach on our side. So I mean, it still is the business consulting and the think tank. And we always thought that the think tank is the one that produces the analysis that can provide to the possible client or clients or even wider audience, because the think tank should be open also for the audiences as well, including also the closed sessions for the specialty that may come in. So you may have your own people. But the analysis itself, one of the things that we discovered is that it has to have compatibility with regard to the complexities that are happening. I mean, one of the main important things that entrepreneur, business people, decision makers, politicians, anybody who is on decision making has to know is that the decision itself, the decision on where to go, has very much to do so with one question. And the main question is, what is to happen? What should we expect? What are the scenario that builds? So I guess that's also the thing that MEES is actually doing.
Yeah, I think that's what we provide for. I mean, I'm aware that the CEOs of large companies like to sit down and have a read of MEES when it comes out on a Friday, because it helps them get an overview of the region and see where things are heading. And we'll always try and have forward-looking analysis. And there, of course, you need
those. I'm sorry, I'm stopping, but before you continue, is this all the CEOs for the Middle East, or is it wider for the Middle East?
No, it's definitely wider. I mean, Vitol, who, you know, trading giant, I know that their CEO is an avid reader, and Patrick Pouyanné as well, the CEO of Total Energies, and generally, I think we have a wide reach. And so MEES's more legacy was that it was one of the first, or if not the first, publication to cover OPEC. When it was formed in 1957 in Beirut, it was one of the only publications that was given access to OPEC, and it's grown through time, and it's changed. Like all media has kind of changed and developed, and now it's, you know, we're a newsletter that tries to provide a bit more analysis and value to what's already out there, because, like I say, you can get news for free nowadays. So what value is there of just regurgitating whatever's out there? So,
but I think that's what makes the difference between open sources and accuracy of open sources, if any, or the combination of capabilities knowing the market. And I think that what makes it maybe different vis-a-vis what's running around. I mean, you can do an open source research, but you really don't know, A, because you may not have been in the field.
Yeah.
B, because you may not have the accurate information to cross-check your information with the field. And number three, because people may not think in different dimensions. And you said it earlier. I said we're going to have this discussion a bit, because I believe personally that it's quite important to say that people think one thing, so they only think energy. They don't mix energy with what is happening in the Middle East, with logistics, with the trading routes, with war, with any sort of capabilities
But you know,
that you know.
you know better than me that wars are started for energy nowadays, right? So you're already mixing politics and energy there. So people need to understand and look at things in a more complex, faceted way. You know.
So how do we explain to people what is happening? I mean, I'm going into, the idea, the attention is towards you, but how do you believe, knowing with your experience so far, and with this network that you have developed and the people that you're talking with, how do you explain to someone what is happening nowadays in the Middle East as an introduction? I know.
It's ha, well, it depends on the person you're talking to
But
as
it is
well. A
but
lot.
it is quite important because Middle East has not been solved for centuries, and more now, more than ever, because now it has combined realpolitik. You said it: energy,
Yeah.
corridors, strategies, resettlements, rebuilding countries, entities. You need safety grounds.
Well, I mean, how do you explain it to anybody? I mean, I get my wife and my in-laws and my mum and all of these people that whenever something energy related is on the news, they'll
Ask you.
immediately it's okay. Let's call Peter up. He'll give us the lowdown. But again, it's also perception. You know, we all have our different perceptions of how things work, and so Mises' editorial line might differ from my honest opinion of how I see things.
Yeah, because you have to keep the balance. You have
Of course
to
you
keep,
do. You need
you
to
have to keep the professionalism running
exactly.
around. When you do this sort of analysis, there's no
You there is
personal touch in this case.
there is a level. Well, we are given a certain level of. Again, it's the value that you add. You need to go slightly beyond maybe what the facts are. Let's say you can give a little bit of opinion. You can lead the reader to an extent. I wouldn't say that you're going to come out and say the axis of Iran, Qatar, and Turkey is a dangerous axis or whatever. But you can go.
You have to have the facts on the
Yeah,
back,
exactly.
and the data
You can't just
that comes.
you can't
into
say it
play.
out of the blue, but you can try and argue it with the events that have happened, that have transpired in the region over the last few years. So it's a difficult one. You need to give every single well, not every single, but you need to give context, and you need to provide a bit of historical context. You need to provide a bit of background context. I mean, my
And
position.
you have to choose wisely because you have very limited space.
Oh yeah, of course. And nowadays everybody's, like you say, not only are they only looking at one subject, but they're also is quite monolithic the way that they look at news. Israel bad, US bad, Palestinians good.
Yeah, they don't mix. They try not to mix. I think this was the attempt of realpolitik. I think over the 90s that they tried to distinguish each area separately, not combined with other things. But the Middle East is more than intertwined.
Yeah, there's so
and the
much
Gulf
grey.
and
It's never black and white.
it affects Southeast Europe. Not only
course it
East Mediterranean, Southeast Europe. It affects.
Well,
It
we're
affects the
talking
Balkans. I
from
mean,
India all the way over to.
no, the war in Russia, Ukraine has affected the Middle East.
Of course.
In a large extent. Not only the powers that are involved, but also the how to do trade. I mean, the Red Sea, for example, which is not involved into the Middle East so far. What was happening in Yemen has an impact right now into the Middle East. So we see the convergence of different
not only the
conflicts.
Middle East, it's Europe as well.
And we can extend that into Africa.
Of course,
We can go
it
that
keeps
in different
expanding.
routes and goes on and on and on.
There's contagion almost. So yeah, you have to be able to peek behind the curtain to an extent, and I mean, you're in a position where you've been able to see behind the curtain a lot of the time, and it's not just as simple as these guys are bad, these guys are good.
No, you can't really express that at all.
No, it's too simplistic, but it's almost how people view the world nowadays, and you kind of have to go deeper a little bit and try to explain to them that, well, if you've been looking at the region, Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis, who's funding these guys, who's bankrolling them,
But I think sometimes people don't even think about that.
No, they don't. But you have to try and
remind. Because easily wise they go like it's a political group. No, it's not a political group. It's an extremist group. It's a terrorist group, and they're terrorizing first, above all, their own people.
Yeah.
And then the region itself. But what is not clear is how much probable damage, and I'm going to the professional analysis if you want, but before I go into that, I want to ask you a small question. The damage, can damage be controlled vis-a-vis what the social media has done? I'm talking about misinformation, disinformation, because social media were there to connect us faster rather than becoming a tool. It has become a tool.
Of course.
In many cases, we don't know what's real, what's not. How does a company or a person who works in journalism, who needs to define elements like this, probably, I've seen it in my own lifetime, where somebody came up and said, well, in the social media it says this. Well, it's wrong. It's false news. It's not true. No, but it's in the social media. Question, has the social media, has it been affected negatively? Can we actually, misinformation, disinformation has been going on for at least a decade. The perspective, the analysis, if you want, the scientific value of it. But now it's more than ever there.
Oh yeah, it's on steroids, really, I think. And it's not helped by the fact that Elon Musk has decided to take control of X or Twitter or whatever you want to call it nowadays.
But is it really Elon Musk, or is it Elon who's trying to produce or project, if you want, some sort of regulation process? Because on the one hand, he's trying to regulate it. On the other hand, he was claiming politically that it was over-regulated.
Exactly.
So does it take for one person to regulate this, or do we go, if you want, more the European way, where regulation over regulation over regulation takes over?
I mean, I think what we're seeing now, to an extent, I mean, we're kind of going off on a tangent here, but I think what we're seeing now, to an extent, is over liberalism entering fascism almost, and hopefully at some stage we'll have a righting of everything and a balance of some kind. I think Musk has been very contradictory in his actions. Like you say, he was talking about getting rid of regulations, but he's also pushing his narrative as much as he can on the platform. And then the EU has gone too far to the other side, and the UK that you've seen recently putting people in jail for social media posts. I mean, it's mad.
It's happening also. I think I saw that in Germany as well. I saw, for some non-reason, like you put the wrong statement or the wrong flag or something.
It's madness.
It made me think, in my own personal social media, maybe it's best not to post anything in the end of the day.
Exactly.
And just advertise.
Exactly.
Advertisement means something neutral, something that you want to sell a message, but a message that is neutral, rather than anything else.
It strikes fear into people that you can't actually express yourself, but that's what social media was there for. It was for people to express themselves without fear, in potential anonymity if they wanted to, and that's kind of been taken away now, because I think, I mean, obviously a lot of people took it too far as well. I think social media is a great tool that people could use, but it's been misused, and I guess.
But what about the let me go a bit, go more in the professional element. How do you know that this analysis that comes out and that is shared in the social media is actually good?
Well, you can't.
You got to read it, obviously, or you got to watch it. But
I mean, I wouldn't even go as far as social media. There's legacy media stories that come out that I read, and my editor will send them to me or forward. I look at this; it's interesting, isn't it? And I'll say to him, "It's not happening. That's not real. It's someone's feeding false news into that news channel, or because I have access to people who are actually in the government or
you cross-check.
Yeah, of course I do.
I mean,
You
I
have
think
to.
the first rule of journalism, if I remember correct, is you have to cross-check your references at all times, maybe twice, three times for people.
It depends.
At least in major newspapers,
Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
remember.
On the publication, each publication has its own rules. So sometimes you need to have it two sources to confirm a piece of news. For us, it's a little bit more relaxed, where our editor will say, if you trust that source,
Go for it.
then then it's kind of on your shoulders as well, because your name
is there and it shows up.
So it avoids having to overly check stuff, because there's some things that you can't get. Maybe one person knows that something's happened. It's almost impossible to get two sources sometimes.
So how do you go in the professional world? So how do you explain that? I go back. What's happening? I know that you're traveling a lot. I know that you're going to different places, venues, meetings, conferences, closed, open sessions. How do you go by it in terms of the representation of your company, the necessity towards the information that comes along, and the perspective of collaboration?
Look, I think, well, again, it's kind of in the beginning, it was difficult to get people to open up, to speak to me, to even recognize who MEES were at the time.
Yeah.
Even though legacy-wise, sort of the older generation knew MEES and kind of respected the work that MEES did.
And do tell us also about MEES.
Yeah, so people respected the work that was done previously, and then it kind of went through a rebranding in the early part of the last decade, and things changed, and the editorial not the angle, but the process changed to an extent. It was more focusing on data and maps, data, and all of that kind of stuff. So people had to kind of get to know MEES again.
Right.
And part of that was also, getting out to conferences for myself and speaking to people and handing over an issue of MEES to somebody, the hard copy, which has kind of disappeared now, but it's still there to an extent, because people want news right now and they want it immediately, and so you get an email to you, PDF, you've got it, read it on your phone nowadays. But previously, before the rebranding, it was just a bunch of papers that were paper clipped together and then sent out. So there wasn't much of a kind of production of the newsletter. It was just, people write the stories, they get edited a bit, and then they get sent out. Now everything needs to fit onto, I think it's multiple of 4. So it needs to be either 12 pages, 16 pages, 20 pages, 24 pages. So it's a nice little booklet, and you can see it. So that process has taken its time, and myself and the other editors who cover the other aspects of the Middle East have really had to work hard to get the contacts again, and to get MEES respected again. And I felt that during my most recent visit to Cairo last week. Sorry, I'll say during my visit to Cairo in February, when a lot of people were coming up to me and saying, MEES, we love your coverage, and who are you? Some of the companies were even asking me, who are your contacts, and you must have great contacts. Well, if I told you who my contacts were, they wouldn't be my contacts anymore. So yeah, it's been refreshing to get that feedback from people within the industry. I mean, we're talking like big companies like BP and Shell and all of these guys who are kind of almost intimidating
players.
to go.
And
Yeah,
the
they're big
main
players,
players,
but
yeah.
they're also quite intimidating because they don't really say too much, and it's very difficult to try and
To get some,
extract
yeah, of
the
course.
tiny.
But that's the
tiny
difference between what to say, not to say.
Yeah, exactly.
So
But I mean, you say that as well, and it's funny that, and I apologize to Sodiris from Energean who told me this, but I'll try and repeat it. So when you start off in the industry, you're writing about something that you're trying to learn about. So you're learning on the job, and you're trying to write the best you can. And then as you develop, you feel like you got a handle on it, and you're writing about things that you know about, and you feel confident. And then the next stage that you get to, which I think I've entered that phase to an extent, is you find out things, but you can't write about them because either they're too sensitive
yeah,
or
this is I think it's called ethics. And I think it's good because sometimes you have to protect your client.
Oh, yeah.
I'm talking about private business
Yeah,
now,
of course.
your client, but you also have to protect the generosity, if I can call it like this, of the analysis that is fed, because you don't want to scare off the potential client or the one who reads it
Of course.
or the one who works on it. So some things you got to keep it for yourself.
Of course.
Some things you have to give it time to mature, and some things you have to be sharing specific value, because that's my field on strategy or security. What do people know about the things that you know? I remember when I was not working in my company. I didn't have my company. I was not in the academic world. I was in the professional world. At some point, I was not aware what people might know, and I was scared to say. Maybe I will be considered too much, to say the least. That I know too many things, and how do you know that, and how does this come along? But it makes sense if you're discussing, analyzing something, writing about it, investigating this, and saying I want to learn more, as an example case. So, considering what you just told me as an introduction, let's go for the remaining of our discussion into the analysis of what's happening. So I'll start country to country, but combined. Okay, I'll start with Syria. Why Syria? Not because it's a latest element. I really believe that we are doing something wrong. There's something wrong with the picture. I was always firm, and I still am, that Syria's war days are not over. We might see something else coming up. I'm not sure, but I really don't like the fact that you have a leader who comes from the world of terrorism, who is now being granted a format of a political leader of some kind of democratic rule. This is my personal opinion. I'm not expecting you to agree on this, in the sense that European leaders go, they visit, they see, they have to do it because the international community has given a de jure agreement, not a de facto agreement on this person going in, probably because Assad was the bad guy already, so he had to go out. But unlike Iraq, that when Saddam left and there were attempts for elections and multiple elections have taken place, this guy comes along and says no in 4 years. And that's where my thoughts were, that this guy's going to stay longer than what people believe. What are your first thoughts, if you want, with regards to Syria?
I mean, obviously it's a very interesting sort of battleground is a bit of a pun to use, but the various factions that are trying to exercise control in Syria, and you're seeing Turkey, Qatar, obviously kicking out of Iran was a very significant move, and a lot
Was
of
it really kicked out?
well, exactly. If you're cozying up to Qatar and Turkey, Iran is still kind of in the shadows. But I think on the face of it, for the people to see that Iran is losing its grip on the region to an extent. I think.
But they've done the same thing in Afghanistan when the U.S. troops withdrew.
Yeah.
The Qataris came with the Turks, starting with the airport, the control of the airport. It goes on and on and on.
Exactly. So, I mean, we often see history repeating itself. I don't know to what extent he's going to try to play different powers off of each other to try and increase his control. I think it's really quite fresh, but I share your concerns that it does look like he's planning on staying for the long haul, as it were, and that is worrying, because you're going to have people, different factions, that are not going to be happy with it. And is he just going to, the king is dead, long live the king? Is it just are we just going to see another Assad, but in a different guise, take control of Syria?
I'll foresight something if that's okay. He's going to use and manipulate the system with anything that was going to be concentrated on rebuilding. He's going to call it rebuilding. That's why probably the leader of Qatar went to Syria. They were overviewing Damascus, and this party is going to be yours, this part is going to be his, this part is going to be his, this part is going to be his. And by rebuilding, people will be looking at new buildings, new parks, and people will think, that this shiny thing is the future of Syria, taking into example case other countries, happening mainly in the Gulf. But there is a difference between the Gulf and Syria. People go there by choice. Yeah. Whereas in Syria, the choice is not there because it's a war-torn. That's the blame to Assad. Yeah. But the later part, you claimed it yourself, has factions. And those factions are different. And suddenly there's 2-3 days, a new map came about, and also a map coming out from Israel coming out, and so on and so forth. So that triggers some sort of instability. What the EU, on the other hand, wants is it wants Syria to control the inflow of illegal migration from anybody who's passing through Syria, or also from Syria into the EU. Hence why they are looking at him by stabilizing. Turkey knows about it, by the way. But don't forget also that Turkey has a proportion of land of about 50 kilometers in Syria, which has not given back to the Syrian government, if you want to play its political ways right in giving back the territory that is Syrian.
I think the question becomes, though, is Syria ready for democracy, though? I mean...
Well, that's it's a $1 million question.
Well, exactly. I mean, you saw Iraq has gone through...
He called it Islamic State of Syria. He called it once. He never did again, in the very first beginning. And he never did again.
Or maybe we'll see that again at some stage when it becomes more palatable, when he feels that he has more support. Maybe he didn't feel that he had
Syria.
enough.
Syria has... people tend to forget the history of Syria, and that's the unforgettable element that I cannot forgive or forget anybody who supports this new... I'm not going to call it regime, that group that is attempting to somehow say that they're stabilizing this. Syria has a beautiful history on the back. And that history cannot be deleted in the blink of an eye. These were the people that were attacking and destroying cultural heritage of the Syrian history, which is many, many centuries back.
Yeah, they're trying to rewrite history to an extent. What can you... I mean, yeah.
And what about Turkey or Israel in that matter? Where do you put that combination?
Well, it's kind of... It's the different factions, isn't it? I mean, you've got, like I said, you've got Turkey, Qatar on the one hand, and then Israel is there, and I mean, I'd be happy to hear your opinion on this as well about, you've got Saudi,
the Gulf,
Saudi, UAE, Israel, IMEC in
the corridor.
That corridor has been talked
up. The corridor is the IMEC has been developed as IMEC, but that was the Abrahamic Accord.
Yeah,
prior to it.
But now
before that.
But now we're seeing other corridors being formed: Qatar, Iran, Syria.
Of course,
Turkey.
the whole thing in the Middle East, you said in the beginning, everything in the Middle East happens because of energy. The corridors. There's a difference between mainland transport and there's a difference between maritime transport. That's the first difference.
Yeah.
And the second thing is that Israel is pivotal to the solution of the issues because everything lands either in Egypt or in Israel. And from these two countries, which are allies of Cyprus and Greece, I say that we need to do more to collaborate with a more stronger asset value by being involved also into the stabilization of the area of the Middle East, especially of what happened recently with Lebanon and what potentially can be done coming from the side of Turkey into the Palestinian issue now that Trump wants to rebuild Gaza the way that he wants to rebuild or a new security architecture comes along.
I mean, I'd be interested on your. I've flipped the script a little bit here.
The discussion is for you.
I'm a journalist,
it's
kind of it's my natural habitat. But more recently, we've kind of seen. I mean, you said Egypt and Israel are allies of Cyprus and allies themselves.
Yeah.
But I think we've seen in recent months since Trump's taken power and even before that, that there's been a bit of a clash between Egypt and Israel, and Egypt has kind of pivoted.
Not on trade, it's not. It's on the Palestinian issue.
Yeah, but then that impacts everything else, though. I mean,
the Abrahamic Accord
just
excluded the conflicts, included negotiations.
Sure, but I mean, just yes.
French fight.
Of course they do, but there's been a recent ramp up in let's say, fake news or unsettling news that Israel's going to increase the price of the gas that it's going to send to Egypt, or Egypt's blaming Israel for this, that, and the other. There seems to be tension there that wasn't previously there. I mean, they were playing
because
playing
Trump
nicely.
Came and said everybody relocate somewhere else, and Egypt doesn't want, obviously. Jordan cannot sustain further.
But you saw
people in Gaza want to stay in their own homes.
But you saw the king of Jordan. He
said
he bent the knee to an extent, and
no, not really. But okay,
he went to see Trump, and he wasn't.
He said about Sisi coming to see Trump,
but Sisi didn't go.
Yes.
And
Sisi,
again,
Sisi represents
from my point of view,
the Arab culture. The way that I understand it from my experiences in the Gulf, he represents the Arab culture. And he's very much supported from the Arab Gulf countries. And the Arab Gulf countries are going to be the ones who are going to help re-pivot, if you want, the Middle East and rebuild coming from that side. Then you have the EU, it's going to be the US.
But how do you put
connect the two?
No, the axes that exist within the Gulf. So you've got Saudi UAE on one hand, and they've kind of been
in the GCC in the agreement of the GCC accepting Qatar back. There is an agreement of the GCC on Qatar and Qatar to the rest, that there is no engagement in the internal affairs of each country.
Sure, but I think Qatar's shown that it can deal with an embargo and a blockade on it.
No, it didn't show that. Turkey did. Turkey showed that.
Well, I think
Qatar was in a very bad state considering what was coming into it until Turkey got involved. And that was the winner. That's why people say they were the winners. Now, Qatar is an important state. We agree on that. It's important because it tries to mediate. It's important because it's an Arab country. It's important because it has a very important culture. We agree on this. But the political difference between Saudi and the UAE is there.
Yeah.
The approachment. You said it with the allies. Iran, Qatar, Turkey. We all know that. Now, the Saudis have a different understanding. In a world that is opening up, a market that is opening up.
Well, they were close to normalization with Israel right
before the 7th of
October.
Absolutely. But there will be an Abrahamic Accord too, I guess. When, it depends on how things develop in a short-term period of time. But it is really important to stress that these are our interlocutor for peace, these countries. And I won't exclude Qatar into this. It is an interlocutor for peace if it goes on the GCC level. The GCC level is mainly presented ethically. The GCC level of the Arab League is ethically presented by the one who leads on the Arab cause, and that is Egypt. And that's where Egypt comes. Jordan gives you the aristocracy of how the connecting ties come. The UAE gives you the agreement of the balances between the north, the south, the east, and the west. It's a crossroad of civilizations with great leadership. And the Saudis gives you the future of the leadership, at least from my experiences on the way that I see it, which are pivotal to the stability and the rebuilding of the Middle East. You have Iraq on the back also, which is trying to rebuild its country and somehow get a national identity on board. You have Syria, who needs to be rebuilt. Lebanon needs to come back to its Lebanese state of affairs, the normal ones. You have Israel, which belongs to the Middle East as well, but it's a democracy in a very different way of understanding. But then again, securitization, which is embedded into the society of the average Israeli, wants to be very Euro-Atlantic. At the same time, he wants to be global and he wants to be local in the Middle East.
Yeah, I mean, I would circle back to an extent and say, how can Cyprus play a role in that? I mean, how
mediation, logistics.
But how can it also play a role in being part of the energy corridor? Because we're seeing an energy corridor form here.
Well,
will Cyprus
why
fall
don't you
away?
answer this? Because you are the one on the discussion. Yes, you're the one on the discussion. But yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. But again, I guess that leadership is required. People are required to take choices, to discuss and envision. I think that's what MEES sees. I mean, from the information that I have, from your work that I have, is that it gives you the options. The difference is we have to take a decision on the options.
I mean, for a long time, Cyprus has been led by foreign powers, let's put it that way. It takes its lead from others. It's a question, it's a rhetorical question to an extent as well. Is there a leadership with a vision there that can get Cyprus involved in this grander vision of the Middle East that is being...
We need that.
That Trump and Israel and the UAE and Saudi and even Qatar are going to try and formulate over the next few months. I think that's the big question. Has Cyprus put all its eggs in one basket with Egypt by signing these deals to send the gas to Egypt?
But that was done before.
Essentially, the agreements were there on the table from before that the gas was going to go to Egypt, but doesn't necessarily mean that it has to go to Egypt, right? I mean, Aphrodite was discovered 2011. We're talking 13, 14 years ago. People are talking about, but Egypt is the quickest way to monetize it. What have you been doing for the last 13 years? I mean, it's unacceptable that it's been sitting in the ground for so long. Kronos, I understand the synergies that exist between ENI, who operate that, and Zor, and combining the two, and those aspects of it. But I feel personally, and from seeing a little bit behind the curtain, maybe that there are opportunities there that will come out or will be put on the table, and by essentially putting all your eggs in that Egypt basket, you're maybe suffocating yourself. You're maybe preventing yourself from looking at a larger picture. I mean, I'm sure Israel would love to cooperate with Cyprus on energy matters, on gas. I
think they've been discussing on and off since 2012.
They have, but I don't feel like there has been a sincere...
On either side?
Not on either side, but I think Israel puts it on the table. Cyprus...
Well, they started with the interconnector for energy.
Yeah.
We're still yet to see that major...
Exactly, the East Med pipeline.
It has to be done. No matter what the cost. I say that because that is the one that defines a political...
Of course.
if you want, future.
There's the East Med pipeline as well. You've got things that corridor that can connect the East Med to Europe.
Right.
That was brought into more attention by the Russia-Ukraine war again.
Right.
So
But that gave it an opportunity. We have not used it in
exactly.
this way.
Why? Why hasn't Cyprus grasped the opportunity? Is it because it's being led by other nations who have other aims, other views, other visions of the region? Is it because a lack of leadership and not having that vision to see that Cyprus can actually take advantage of its resources and become more powerful, not more powerful, but use it as leverage when it comes to talks on the Cyprus problem? Because instead of burning it as a card, you can use it as leverage. But then you need leadership, right?
Right.
I mean, again,
I agree. But that discussion can go for a great deal of hours,
Of course.
considering that this is an unfinished business. And with this, I'm going to end. But one of the reasons why we wanted to have you here today, and I thank you for joining us, was exactly to give, if you want, not so much the journalism point of view, but how difficult an analysis can be for the Middle East, for somebody who actually sees the Middle East day in, day out by being your work. It needs a lot of cultural intention. It needs a lot of balances. It needs a lot of understanding from different point of views and sides. And I really thank you very much, and for your work that you're doing at MEES. And I think it's really great. And I look forward for more.
well, thank you for having me, and it's been a pleasure to have this chat. And like you say, we could have gone on for hours.
Thank you. Thank you all for watching another web series of Strategy International. Please like, share, subscribe, and follow into our social media and YouTube channel. My name is Dr. Marios Efthymiopoulos. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Strategy International. And remember, impact makes a difference.